Watch Dogs Legion. I played it a couple days ago and it's doing some really interesting things. Now, after the original Watch Dogs launched, the series has definitely taken a bit of a direction change. Watch Dogs 2 was set in a fictionalized version of the San Francisco Bay Area, but the main difference when compared to the first game was the tone. It had a much lighter feel to it and it didn't take itself too seriously, and for the most part I felt that helped the game quite a bit. The hacking angle that Watch Dogs first introduced is great, but it needed some cool missions and just interesting dialogue really to keep players engaged, and I think the sequel did a very good job of that. The missions were just a bit more fun. Now, the new game that's just been announced, Watch Dogs Legion, seems to take those principles and cranks them right up to 100 and beyond and mashes them together, and it's set in a near future London. Now, there is so much talk right now about Britain and of course Brexit, and this game actually fits into that narrative very well. In fact, during the E3 press conference, they actually do mention Brexit. So essentially the game is set post-Brexit and London is not looking good. The government seems to be in disarray and extremists are gaining power. Organised power is rampant. There's a social unrest as well and a huge amount of unemployment due to automation. Drones are used for everything. It also seems as though the pound has been overtaken in value by cryptocurrency. So, like I said, London is not in a good state. Of course, to make this a Watch Dogs game, there's got to be a hacking element, and part of the fall of London has meant that it's become a surveillance state, which means cameras are everywhere. Drones fly overhead. Is this what Brexit will actually look like? Well, let's hope not. It's definitely recognisable as London though. Sure, it's near future and some areas are looking very different because of the social unrest, but you can definitely tell that it's London, even down to Trafalgar Square, which looks quite different in the game. I did a little mission there and there's a big protest going on. And Big Ben, which is no longer under construction, and of course the classic red London bus and the phone boxes. Visually it looked incredible, and when any game is set in the UK it tends to perk up my interest because as someone who's from the UK, there aren't really that many games that tend to be set here. Everything felt familiar but with this dystopian future twist to it. It was cool to see. Even Camden Market has now become Camden Black Market, and I went and did a mission there where I had to execute 3 targets. Now we're going to get to the real nitty gritty of this game, the big mind blown moment. What if I told you that in this game there wasn't just one player that you play as, there isn't really a main character? Now that maybe would interest some people, but what if I then told you that you can play as any character that you come across in London? I imagine that would raise some eyebrows and people would say, well, that's impossible. Well, I have to admit that when I heard about this via some leaks before E3, I was quite skeptical. I mean, how would that even work? Well, as it turns out, I've played it and it's absolutely true. Anyone who's played the previous Watch Dogs games will be familiar with DedSec, and they are an anonymous-esque hacking organisation that's a core part of the Watch Dogs games. And in Legion, you can recruit any NPC that you come across to be part of the DedSec organisation. That means that you could recruit a police officer or a taxi driver or an assassin, or perhaps, as the gameplay reveal showed us and as who I got to play as at the start, a granny. Yes, bear with me. In previous Watch Dogs games you were able to scan all of the NPCs that you encountered, and one of the interesting things was that they would all have their own stories. Some of them would be on the phone, some of them would be reading papers, and they'd all have their own backstories that you could eavesdrop on and find information about. Now Legion uses that premise, but it takes it one step further. Now you can use information that you've gained to recruit these people into DedSec and eventually play as them. And in Legion, each NPC has a unique look, style, even a schedule, their own animation sets. When you're playing as the granny, you're quite slow and you kind of shamble along, and when you climb over things it looks like a real struggle, but you can play as a granny. If you play as someone younger, then you'll run faster, you'll be a bit more mobile, but maybe your skills and traits will be a bit different to someone with more experience. So when you found someone that you perhaps want to join DedSec, maybe they've got some skills or traits that you like, then you'll need to find an angle to help get them fully on your side. This means that you'll have to do an onboarding mission that will bring them into the fold. And once you have your new recruit, you can swap between them at any time, using their different traits and skills to suit whatever mission that you're currently doing. But get this, if you die, that character, their name, their traits, their skills, is lost. Permadeath. Gone. What was cool about when I was playing is that the cutscenes were individual to me, to who I was playing as at the time. And this means that each player can have a vastly different experience depending on who they recruit to their team. You could go for a team full of assassins or a team full of old age pensioners, perhaps all athletes. The reality is that everyone is going to recruit different people, and I really like that concept. Every character is going to have their own animations and voice acting. On the surface it sounds like an incredible amount of work to pull off. And about the voices, apparently they're using some kind of voice modulation here. They've got a lot of voice actors, but with voice modulation they've managed to figure out a way to change each voice so much that it always sounds different. Now, creative director Clint Hocking has assured us that these characters are not just different skins and that every person will feel distinct. I mentioned earlier that once a character dies, they are gone, which is an interesting situation, especially if you get really attached to one particular person. Apparently your characters can also get captured or arrested, meaning you would have to use a different character to try and rescue them if you wanted to risk it. So whenever you get into a game ending or permadeath situation, you've got an option. You can surrender or try and make a run for it on low health. Of course, if you run for it and get away, great. But if you don't, you could be killed. Permadeath, you're gone. Surrendering will mean that you'll temporarily lose that character, but there is a chance for you to get them back. I had a great situation when I was playing where the first guy that I recruited ended up being killed. I went to Trafalgar Square, a bomb exploded, and then the police showed up and there was just so many of them. I couldn't escape, they killed me, and I risked it. I tried to get away and that guy died. And then I respawned as one of the other people that I'd recruited. And in my contact list, I was lucky enough, I'd actually scanned the person that killed the guy that I was playing as. So what did I do? Well, I've got all their information, I found out their schedule, I drove to where they were going to be at a certain time of day, incapacitated them with a remote explosive. They were then taken to hospital and I managed to hack the hospital records and find out where they were and terminate them while they were in their hospital bed as revenge for killing my guy. And that was just such a cool moment. Just one example, I suppose, of how you can use this new system. One thing that I think would be really cool with the NPCs though is if the game looked at your friends list and populated some of the NPCs in the world with names of your friends. So you could recruit your mate Tommy or Adam or Christine or whoever it might be. So each of your characters can fall into one of three different categories: hackers, enforcers or infiltrators. Enforcer is much more of a run and gun character, whereas infiltrator is more stealth focused and can go invisible for a bit, and then the hacker is a dab hand at drones, spider bots and spider turrets. And like I said, the infiltrator, they can go temporarily invisible to cameras and citizens because apparently all of the citizens now have neural implants, and when you use that ability it just stops you from being able to be seen by those implants, so effectively rendering you invisible. What's cool here is that not only are you recruiting all of these characters, in fact up to 20 in total in your roster at any one time, but you can then upgrade them individually as you play. So you actually end up investing a lot of time with each of them. And some of them have different team traits that take effect when you're playing with a different character, and of course each will have their own strengths and weaknesses. Also, don't expect the hacking element to be dumbed down at all, as this is still the core of the Watch Dogs franchise. There are still doors to be hacked, drones to be controlled, drones to surf on, yes, spider bots to set up on enemies, and you can still do the remote access thing on cars to hack them, make them turn left and right, or just use them to create a diversion. There's a real mix of vehicles in the game too, ranging from older classics and of course more futuristic vehicles because of the near future setting. So when it comes to combat, well, Ubisoft have said that half of the weapons in the game are actually non-lethal, and you did get to see the lovely granny assassin Helen using her taser to great effect, but we also saw Naomi in the B-roll go full John Wick, using a mixture of impressive melee fighting and rifle gunplay. I tried to be as stealthy as possible when I was playing, and I infiltrated Scotland Yard, did a couple of missions in there where I was doing some crazy takedowns on people, and it felt quite satisfying. You can now do grapple mechanics as well. It just felt kind of nice to go from this crazy hand-to-hand combat mixed with the fluid gunplay. It was impressive. There are of course real lethal weapons in the game too, but a stealth approach does seem to be the order of the day where possible. In fact, in Legion, you've got an actual reason not to fire. It seems that your enemies will only draw when drawn upon, so if you stick to melee, then your enemies are likely to do the same. Pull a gun and the situation will quickly escalate. Now, one of the things that I think Watch Dogs 2 did really well was that it gave you the option of how to play. You could hack your way through missions, setting up traps or sneaking past enemies, or you could just go all guns blazing if that's more of your cup of tea. Neither is really right or wrong, but you had the option. With this sort of game, you really need a good amount of time to get stuck into it to get a feel, but it does feel to me that it's not too much of a departure from Watch Dogs 2 when it comes to the core missions and the general feel of the game, but there's so much new stuff in here that it felt fresh to me. I have to say that I was pretty impressed with what I played of Watch Dogs Legion. Definitely piqued my interest, and the whole metagame of building your army of NPCs is cool and being able to play as anyone. There's going to be 5 story threads in there too. Of course, there are side characters that are the same for everyone, but the main people that you play as, the NPCs, always different. Ultimately, I think this game will either rise or fall on that NPC system. If every character does actually feel unique and they perhaps offer up different abilities and skills, then I think they're onto something really interesting and engaging here. If, however, after some time recruiting new people, you start to see a bit of repetition and a lot of crossover, then perhaps the novelty could wear off. Hopefully that isn't the case. Let's be absolutely honest though, we're all going to create an army of grannies and they're all going to be assassins, because why would you want to play as anyone else? But maybe she just doesn't have the mobility of some of the other characters, so if there's ever a foot race, I feel that the army of grannies might be at a disadvantage. What if they all perished? Well, I don't think I could face the game anymore. It's a real dilemma, and one that we'll all get to face in March 2020 when the game releases. And if you want to check out the game for yourself, you can click the link down in the description below. With that said, that's all for today, guys. A big thanks to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video and letting me get hands-on and early access to the game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked the video, a dislike if you didn't, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.